In a world where people are feeling disconnected, uncertain, and overwhelmed these days, there has never been a more important time to come back to love. I'm Robyn Vogel, psychotherapist, relationship expert, love and intimacy coach, and the author of Come Back to Love, A Path to Healing. For over 20 years, I've been sitting with people in their most tender, courageous moments, the heartbreaks, the longing, the walls they've built around their hearts, and the quiet hope that real love is still possible. I want to tell you that it is. This show is a sanctuary, a place to heal the past, reconnect with yourself, and fall in love again with your life, with others, and most importantly, with yourself. Welcome to Come Back to Love. We are on KMET, your ABC News Radio affiliate station. We are live Thursdays in Southern California at 1:30 p.m., obviously Pacific time, and 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's 1490 AM and 98.1 FM. I'm Robyn Vogel. I am so excited to be here. As you know, my listeners know that I do a lot of solo shows, and I am dropping in about once a month with a guest, a special guest, which is really fun and exciting for me. Today, we have Lisa Callahan, and we're going to talk about a variety of things related to love and relationship. We're definitely going to drop in some information and some conversation about feminine leadership and how that works. And I just want to share with you that Lisa Callahan is a leading master coach and co-host of The Things We Know. That's capital TH and The Things We Know, a podcast ranked in the top 10% globally. With over 20 years of experience, she has helped thousands of women gain clarity and confidence through her signature Transformation for Real system. I love that. A former Weight Watchers leader, Lisa is known for her heart-centered approach and ability to make people feel truly seen and heard. She lives in LA and is a passionate advocate for LGBTQ, and I'm sure there's plus rights and
Yep,
women's leadership, because yeah, I don't have all those letters committed to memory right now, but
totally fair.
totally appreciate it. Wow, so welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm
Welcome to
so
the
glad to be
show.
here.
Yeah, and
So
we're live
excited.
on the radio, just like not in LA, unfortunately, but right nearby to LA in Southern
Okay,
California. Yeah,
that's
that's
awesome.
every Thursday. Yeah. And then after it goes live on the radio, it goes to all the podcast platforms that everybody knows and loves. So,
Awesome. Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah, it's really wonderful. So, I'm just going to dive right in with just before we actually went live today, you were starting to say that you're having an anniversary with your
hmm
partner and that you met 40 years
40
ago.
years ago. Yep.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I am sure that my listeners and me, we all want to know the secret to staying together for 40 years. No pressure, though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny because I said I'm happy to talk about love because I am so present to it right at this moment. And you said, well, feminine leadership has a lot to do with that. And I agree. But honestly, what I really think is Darren and I's secret sauce is there is no real hierarchy in our relationship. We are true partners. I never feel like he's trying to have power over me, and I don't ever try to have power over him. One of the beautiful things about soft power, about feminine leadership, is that feminine leadership really means power with or for versus power over. And so when I think about Darren and I's relationship, and we have two amazing kids, and we've moved from Ohio to Chicago to LA, we've been married almost 28 years, but we've been together 38 and we met 40 years ago. I
Mm.
think what keeps it going is like we truly are equals. There's
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's really interesting. It brings up a topic that I will touch on in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So first you took a moment to define feminine leadership, which I think is really important. And that's like a softer, yeah, do you want to say more? I mean, the feminine masculine polarities are very present in my own work.
Yeah, I bet.
So I'd love to hear, yeah,
Yeah.
what it is for you.
Yeah, I think so for me, feminine leadership, it doesn't mean that masculine leadership is bad, right? To your point, it's polarities, and both can be together, can work really well. And I often think that when you hear the idea of feminine leadership, some people go, oh, women are going to treat men the way they've treated women all these years. And that's absolutely not the case. When you think about feminine leadership, we're here to bring everybody with us. We're here about to be collaborative, right? To ask for other people's opinions and actually listen to those opinions, right? We're here to pivot really easily. There, the old trope is women are too emotional to lead. Actually, that's not true. We're really good at pivoting and bending without breaking and continuing to move forward. We have the ability to be visionaries and play the long game even when the short game needs attention as well. We can manage a bunch of things at once. We have the ability, we have such great intuition if we're willing to listen to it, and we can read the room and the culture and the unspoken tension that might be in any given room or relationship. And again, pivot with all of that. So I
Mhm.
think when I think about feminine leadership, those are all the qualities that are so important in whether we're talking about the boardroom or the bedroom, quite frankly.
Exactly. Yeah, I love how you just described it, and it really I was on the same wavelength, like thinking about how that shows up in the workforce,
Hmm.
especially if someone's in like a more corporate organization, type environment, and how it shows up in relationship. And I'm curious how, I mean, in your work and in your witnessing,
Yeah.
also, like how you've seen, before we get to the relationship piece, like the feminine leadership be accepted or allowed, supported
Mm.
in the workforce or in the world, maybe,
Yeah.
depending on how you want to answer it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's the important piece, right? This is why this is my purpose right now and why it's the thing I really want to be out there speaking about. It's what drives myself and my co-host with our podcast as well, to let women know that the best is not behind them, no matter how old they are. They can always create the next chapter that makes them love their life. Um, and I think it's more important now than ever, especially because women are they're trying to sideline us and they're trying to gaslight us and tell us that, we should just be staying at home and making dinner and talk about inequality, right? I mean, if all I'm doing is caretaking my husband, how am I loving my life? So I think what's interesting and what I really focus on and what I'm really proud of with the clients that work with me and where they get to is they come to me kind of chaotic and not like they're chaotic, but there's so much going on in their head.
Mm,
And what I do is sort of step in and I think almost like personally organize their brain. We let them tell me everything they want, what's
mm,
important to them, why they want it, why it's important to them. And then I can work through the weeds of that and really
mm,
point them in the right direction and give them the confidence all along the way. Because as they create what they want, we break it down into small steps and celebrate along the way. And with each celebration, they're reinforcing for themselves, I did it. I did the thing I said I was going to do, which builds their confidence. And so, sure, part of that is absolutely walking into men centered spaces, maybe the only woman in the room, and having the confidence to stand their ground and have their voice be heard. Even if they're even if the men aren't hearing them, right? They're still speaking their piece. And that confidence doesn't mean they're not scared. It just means they're doing it scared. So that's the piece I think that's really drives my work is that I want women to walk into every room feeling confident, quite frankly, having the confidence of a mediocre white man, to be honest.
mm. Wow, yeah. Yes, and as you were speaking about this, I was really thinking about women in relationship.
Hmm.
And curious, just I always like to ask a question to my listeners, and that is that are there places in your relationships, whether it's with a man, maybe it's a male partner, maybe it's a male friend, maybe it's just friendships, period. So because I'm not only talking about heterosexual connections, as you know, we
Right.
said, but are there places where you might, again, this is for our listeners, like shrink back, hold back, not take the lead, not speak up for yourself, not take care of yourself. I mean, I think these are, really big, important things to look at, to do self-inquiry on and work through, and start to really look at how to make that change so that you show up in your full feminine self. And
Yeah.
yeah, was
That's a
there
great
any?
question.
Yeah, so I'm asking that to the listeners. I always invite
Yep.
people to send me an email if they want to. They can do that through
Okay.
comebacktolove.com. I love to hear answers to the questions that I pose. I'm curious in your own personal journey if that kind of confidence and leadership was where you began in your life. Did you pop out this way, or was there a winding path that got you to like really solidify that in yourself?
So it, that is interestingly kind of a hard question for me to answer. And here's why. Because I would say I didn't pop out this way. I would say when I think back on my life, so again, my husband and I met when we were 17, 18, right? And so when I think of that time in my life, I did not think of myself as being confident, right? However, I have been told, because I'm still friends with lots of people from that time period, I have been told that, oh, wow, yeah, you were always confident. You were always kind of a hard ass. You were always kind of like, the person everybody wanted to follow. I did not see myself that way. But as I have gotten older and I have done the things I said I was going to do. Because again, that's a big piece of confidence. We
Mhm.
think, oh, if I don't do what I say I'm going to do for myself, nobody knows. But you're letting yourself down. And it's no different than letting a friend down. If you keep letting a friend down, they're not going to have confidence in you. So if you keep letting yourself down, you're going to lose confidence in yourself. So
Right.
as I kept doing the things I said I was going to do, I felt my confidence. And so now I can look back and go, okay, I was probably more confident than I realized. So I probably was in some ways born this way, but I've also nurtured it and I've also learned. And that's the key to confidence is some people are born confident, but you can learn it and you can nurture it. If you're sitting here now and being like, oh, I am not confident, do the next thing you say you're going to do, and you will feel that confidence rise like a little temperature gauge.
Mm. So do the next thing you said you were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about confidence. It's a pretty big topic.
Yeah.
Um, and, self-esteem is different than self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you want to share the distinction there. And yeah, let's share that distinction first.
As far as in my mind, self-esteem is a little bit more how you feel about yourself. It's more of a
Mhm.
feeling, I think, whereas
Yes.
confidence is an active, like it's action, you know. Um,
Yeah.
I don't always have good self-esteem and have it. I mean, I was a Weight Watcher leader for a reason, you know. Um, you at the time that I worked for Weight Watchers, you had to have gone through the program, lost weight, kept it off. So, that's unfortunately very tied to self-esteem.
Yeah.
So I don't think I've always had good self-esteem. That has definitely wavered over the years. Still does. Even I'm almost 57. There are times quite frankly, when Carrie and I started the pod in 2023, we had a lot of self-esteem. We were just like, we got this. We're doing great. And different things happen in life that have knocked us off our own little pedestal. So that's an ebb and a flow. But I do believe that once you start building confidence, if you keep following through, that can be stayed. That can really stick. The
Yeah.
the esteem might flow, but the confidence can be really solid.
Yes, I have a concept that I share with my clients, whether they're working one-on-one or at a workshop or retreat that I lead, and it goes like this. low rep, high reward. I learned it from
Yeah.
a man because for me, it's a very masculine metaphor,
Yeah.
but it works for me. Low rep, high reward, right? Like just choose the 1 pound weight and do one small rep with your biceps, let's say,
Yeah.
and that's it. And then take the next, take the next, take the next. And the high reward is that you're starting to strengthen a muscle
Hmm.
and you took the action that's going to move you
Right.
forward, right? So when you talk about building confidence, it's for me, it's the same. And we've just said, you said it already. I'm saying it in different language, right? Low rep, really high reward because the
Yeah, no,
feedback
that's a
loop,
great analogy.
yeah,
Great analogy. Confidence is even if you were born this way. I mean, again, I can look back on my life and I was not exercising that muscle in high school, maybe even college, but
yeah,
I certainly have in the last 20 years, because each thing I did that kind of stretched me out of my comfort zone, becoming a Weight Watcher leader was not on my bingo card. And it was very scary at first.
yeah.
But then I did it and I loved it. And that's what led to me being a coach, which led to me being a podcaster and, so forth and so on.
Wow. Wow. Each step built
Yeah.
confidence and actually just kept supporting you in your life journey and your life path.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So let's go back to the love and relationship piece.
Okay.
It was really interesting for me to hear you talk about, you and your husband, Darren,
Yeah.
um, being like equal partners.
Hmm.
And 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 that's great, of course. Like,
Sure.
there's so many ways to look at relationship. In my world, which is in part infused with studying and teaching Tantra, we talk
Mm,
about the masculine and the feminine energies, and we kind of emphasize the polarity
okay.
because the polarity is what attracts, right? The magnet pulls the positive and the negative together.
Uh-huh.
It can barely pull it apart.
Yeah.
And also it has to do with sex and sexual
Hmm.
connection and feeling turned on and feeling the connection between the two people. It's a really big topic. I work with some couples now, but I spent about 10 years out of my, 25-year journey here really focused on couples. And a
Okay.
lot of them would come in and say, we're kind of like roommates. It's
Hmm.
flat, you know,
Yeah.
the masculine energy kind of shrinks. The feminine energy can sometimes take over,
Yeah.
and there's no polarity or not much polarity, and they're roommates, and
Yeah.
there's other things that actually, show up in that expression of being roommates. And so that's been some of my most gratifying work actually is to identify that and help couples see that and see what they created, not on purpose, but, you know, sort of unconsciously created, and inviting each of them to really step into the true feminine and the true masculine. And it goes kind of against, what's more politically correct in some
Right.
ways, which is why I
Yep.
waited in the conversation till now. So, listeners, here we are. We're talking about sex, masculine and feminine polarities. And we are here with Lisa Callahan with the infusion of feminine leadership in there and a 40-year relationship. And anyway, thank you for being here, everybody. And thank you for being here, Lisa.
Absolutely.
So we're headed into this piece. I'm curious, like,
I'm open.
what you want to share.
Well, first off, I actually feel like I want to say thank you for doing that work because Carrie and I, again, my co-host with the podcast, we have retreats that we run twice a year called the Best Chapter Yet retreats. And they're again meant for women to build their next best chapter. And I guess I don't want to say surprised because I'm not surprised. We've talked about this exact thing on our not tantra, but just the idea that, as we get older, men lose their sex drive. Sometimes women lose it too, but sometimes women gain their sex drive. That's been my experience.
Yeah, me too.
And we have many conversations at these retreats because they're small and intimate and safe. And lots of times the women have been at our retreats several times, so they know each other. But there's a lot of we just live as roommates. And more often than not, they find it's coming from a place of sadness. Um, Not necessarily because the women's like, oh, I'm dying to have more sex, but just that loss of intimacy and
Sure.
what society deems as intimacy, right? So I love that you are acknowledging that and letting teaching people how to work with it versus trying to fit into some cookie cutter box of what
Yeah.
age looks like or sex looks like, right?
Right.
Um, and I think knowledge is power. You know, naming it is power. So what you're doing is really opening up possibilities for people to look at intimacy in a different way.
Mhm.
And I think that's incredibly important because again, we're at a stage, I'm obviously Gen X and we we're the new boomers, right? We're the new oldest, getting to be the new oldest generation, and
Yes.
our parents didn't talk about this stuff,
Mm-mm.
right? And so we're all of a sudden like, oh my, what is happening? I mean, it never dawned on me that men lost their sex drive. I
Mhm.
don't, I never thought of their hormones as changing. I only knew barely about it, menopause, you know? And
Right.
so I think it's something that is starting to be talked about, and it's so incredibly important, especially if you want to stay with your partner, because I think when you're not feeling that connection and you're not getting support around it, it could be the reason to leave a relationship. And I
Right.
don't think of leaving a relationship as a failure. I think sometimes relationships end, but I think what if they don't want it to? And they think that's the thing that they have to do because they no longer are attracted or no longer having sex or whatever. So all
Right.
that to say, your work is incredibly important.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to speak to it just for a moment, and that is that there's a way, and it's interesting to speak with you about feminine leadership in the boardroom, uh, and maybe in the bedroom,
Hmm.
but maybe not in the bedroom, in
Right.
terms of not confidence, although this relates to confidence, but in terms of stepping into the bedroom and being able to release all of the doing
Hmm.
and the multitasking that you said we're so capable of. I mean, absolutely 100% we are so capable as women.
Yep.
But to create this polarity, there's like a relaxation and a receiving and a surrender.
Mm.
And for me, yeah, exactly. Like deep breath, relax. For me, the feminine is about the softness you mentioned, and also about just being in the flow and being open to whatever shows up. And then that allows a masculine energy. It doesn't matter the biology of the body. It allows a
Right.
masculine energy to show up in a taken care of, in a holding space for, in a creating the container that allows the feminine energy to truly be the feminine energy, which is not the masculine energy. It's just not. They are different.
Right.
So there's a whole piece here in our culture in living during this time period post feminism, right, from the 50s
Hmm.
that has neutralized and it's impacting relationships. Not all, but a lot, keeps the
Yep.
couples therapists and kept me in business. Anyway, it's an interesting topic and I'm just such a deep fan of allowing the feminine energy to be present, in all.
I just you saying some of that stuff brings tears to my eyes because again, I think of my clients, I think of our retreat participants, I think of our listeners and just the suffering that they are feeling um because they don't have the language for it. You know, they don't understand it and we weren't taught it, you
Yeah.
know. And so I think it's an important thing to get out there as this generation so that millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha
Yes.
and I already do think I have Gen Z kids and they are much
Mhm.
more willing to talk about sex and that sort of thing
Yeah,
than I was. Um, but let them know that that's valid and feel seen and heard around it.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing in that piece. I also have kids that age and yeah, totally. Like what can change, what's possible in the
Hmm.
future.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much, Lisa. This has been incredible to have this conversation with you. I love the mix of that feminine piece of leadership and bringing the energy forward. How can our listeners find you?
You can find our podcast, The Things We Know, everywhere.
Great.
And then you can find me and my work at transformationforreal.com.
Awesome. Beautiful. And listeners, you can find me always at comebacktolove.com. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you all next Thursday.
Thank you.